Alex stood on the edge of the bustling spaceport, trying his best to appear confident, even though his stomach was twisted in knots. His first big diplomatic mission had brought him to the galactic summit on the planet Lorien, a place where dozens of alien species had gathered to discuss peace, trade, and cooperation. Alex was a young, relatively new human diplomat, and this was the moment he had worked towards for years. It was his chance to prove that humanity could be a valuable partner in the galactic community. But now that he was actually here, surrounded by towering beings with scales, shimmering skin, and eyes that gleamed with knowledge far beyond his, Alex couldn't help but feel out of place. As he made his way through the crowd of alien delegates, he adjusted his suit and tried to hide his nerves. This wasn't just any conference. The people here had lived for centuries, and some even believed they were beyond the concept of time. And then there was him, Alex, a mere human, barely a blip in their long history. He paused at the entrance of the grand conference hall, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The room was filled with the hum of quiet conversations, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Diplomats from various planets were scattered across the room, all in deep discussions about how to move the galaxy forward. Some spoke in languages Alex had only read about in textbooks, their voices melodious and strange to his ears. But one voice caught his attention. "Excuse me," Alex whispered to a nearby assistant, his voice cracking slightly. "Who is that?" The assistant glanced over his shoulder, eyes scanning the crowd before landing on a woman across the room. "That's Naira," he said. "She's the representative of the Xerian species, one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the galaxy. They say her people have knowledge that spans the universe." Alex's eyes widened as he took in the sight of her. Naira was unlike anyone he had ever seen before. She was tall and graceful, with platinum blonde hair that cascaded down her back in sleek waves. Her violet eyes glowed softly, holding a depth of wisdom that seemed impossible for someone so young to possess. She wore a simple but elegant dress that seemed to shimmer with the faintest hint of starlight, and her posture radiated confidence and authority. Alex had heard the rumors, of course. Naira was considered a legend in galactic circles, a figure whose name was spoken with reverence. But seeing her in person, he was struck by something more than her beauty. There was an aura about her, an intensity that seemed to make the very air around her vibrate with energy. He watched as Naira spoke with another delegate, her voice calm and composed, yet with an undertone of power. It was clear that she was used to being listened to, and her presence commanded respect. Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The confidence he had tried so hard to maintain began to waver, replaced by a deep sense of uncertainty. He knew this moment was important. He had to make a good impression, especially on someone like Naira. She was the key to building a strong relationship with her species, and if he failed, it could affect humanity's place in the galaxy. But no matter how hard he tried to focus, his thoughts kept wandering back to her, Naira, the alien who had captivated him without saying a single word. As the summit progressed, Alex found himself wandering the grand hall, lost in thought. He had been introduced to several delegates and engaged in some basic diplomatic talks, but nothing felt real. His mind was elsewhere, focused on the woman who seemed to glide through the crowd like a ghost. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he saw her again. Naira stood alone, her eyes focused on the large display screen at the far end of the room. She appeared to be lost in her thoughts, and Alex saw this as his chance. His heart raced as he walked over, mentally rehearsing his opening line. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. "Hello, Naira," Alex said, his voice steady but his hands slightly trembling. "I'm Alex. It's an honor to meet you." Naira turned to face him, her violet eyes locking with his. For a moment, the room seemed to fade away. It was as if there was only the two of them standing there, the entire galaxy pausing to watch. She smiled faintly, but there was a subtle warmth in it, a kindness that Alex didn't expect from someone so powerful. "It's a pleasure, Alex," she replied, her voice smooth and melodic. "I've heard of you, the human diplomat. I trust your mission is going well." "Well, yes, thank you," Alex stammered, feeling the weight of her gaze. "It's my first time here, so I'm just trying to find my place. It's all a little overwhelming, to be honest." Naira's smile softened, a knowing glint in her eyes. "It can be daunting. The galaxy is vast and not all of it is kind, but your species has a certain resilience. It's one of the reasons why the Galactic Council has shown interest in humanity." Alex felt a surge of pride at her words, though he tried not to show it. He had heard rumors about how some of the elder species viewed humanity. Some thought humans were too young, too impulsive to be trusted with the fate of the galaxy. But Naira's words, though subtle, suggested something different. Perhaps there was hope for them after all. "I'll do my best to live up to that trust," Alex said, his voice gaining confidence. "I believe there's a lot humanity can offer. We're just starting to understand the universe around us, and we want to share our discoveries with others." Naira nodded, her eyes never leaving his. For a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a connection that went beyond words. Alex had always thought of himself as just an ordinary man, but standing before Naira, he felt as though he had a part to play in something much bigger than himself. "Perhaps you will," Naira said softly. "The future is shaped by those who dare to believe in it." And then, in a moment of nervousness, Alex blurted out the words that would change everything. "You're gorgeous," he said before he could stop himself. There was a beat of stunned silence. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Naira's face, usually composed and calm, flushed, a deep shade of violet that mirrored the color of her eyes. The silence stretched, and Alex realized with horror what he had just said. He hadn't meant it in any way other than as a compliment. But the way Naira's face reddened, her eyes widening slightly, sent shockwaves through the room. The powerful, unshakable Naira, the figure who had stood at the center of countless galactic councils, had just blushed. The air around them seemed to freeze, as though the galaxy itself had come to a halt. The delegates nearby stopped their conversations, eyes flicking toward them. Alex felt his face burn with embarrassment, but before he could say anything more, Naira spoke in a voice so soft, it could barely be heard above the hum of the room. "You think so?" she asked, her voice filled with a quiet surprise. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this kind of reaction. Naira, the unflappable diplomat, seemed vulnerable. A strange, uncomfortable silence lingered between them until finally she regained her composure. She cleared her throat and smiled, though there was an oddness in the gesture. "I thank you," she said, her voice steady again. "That was unexpected." Alex could barely respond. His brain was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Naira, the ancient and powerful alien, had blushed because of something he had said. It was as though he had unknowingly opened a door to a side of her that no one else had ever seen. Before he could say another word, Naira turned, walking away with a calm but deliberate stride. The crowd slowly resumed their conversations, but Alex remained frozen in place. He couldn't understand what had just happened. Why had Naira blushed? What had his simple comment triggered? As he stood there trying to make sense of it all, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his mistake, the unintentional compliment, had just set something in motion. Something that would change the course of this summit, and perhaps his life forever. Alex had spent the entire night tossing and turning in his bed, his mind replaying the moment over and over again. He couldn't believe what had happened. His innocent, offhand comment had caused a reaction so strong, so unexpected, that it felt like the entire galaxy had come to a halt. Naira, the woman who had made an entire room of delegates hang on her every word, had blushed, and he, Alex, had been the cause of it. The next morning, as the summit resumed, Alex found it hard to focus. He couldn't stop thinking about Naira's reaction. Every time he saw her in the room, he couldn't help but feel a rush of embarrassment, but also something else. Something he couldn't quite name. There was a strange pull between them that neither of them seemed able to ignore, though neither of them spoke of it directly. He was trying to prepare himself for another day of diplomacy, but all he could think of was Naira. What had it meant? Was it just a momentary lapse in her usually composed demeanor, or had he somehow broken through to a side of her no one else had seen? As the day wore on, Alex found himself caught in the whirlwind of diplomatic meetings and conferences, but his eyes often wandered back to Naira. She moved through the crowd with the same grace and calmness that he had noticed before. There was still a certain air of mystery around her, and Alex couldn't help but be drawn to it. The conference had started to feel more like a game of chess, with each species playing their part in the larger, delicate balance of power. The delegates spoke in formal tones, exchanging pleasantries, but there was a sense that something much deeper was at play. And at the center of it all stood Naira, an enigmatic figure whose very presence seemed to hold the weight of the galaxy itself. Despite all of this, Alex couldn't shake the thought that he was still in over his head. He had hoped for a smooth introduction, but the way things had unfolded made him feel like a mere bystander in a much larger narrative. It was during one of the afternoon sessions, when Alex was once again sitting in a large conference hall, that he noticed Naira standing off to the side. She was looking out of the window, her violet eyes distant as though lost in thought. She looked alone. The way she stood there, so still, reminded Alex of someone caught between worlds, torn between duty and desire. He knew he had to say something. He couldn't let their last interaction be an awkward moment neither of them would address. So he stood up, excusing himself from the group he had been speaking with, and walked over to her. As he approached, Naira didn't immediately turn. She was still gazing out the window, as though the answers to the galaxy's greatest mysteries were hidden in the stars beyond. Alex stood beside her, hesitating for just a moment before he spoke. "Hey," he said softly, his voice uncertain. "I just wanted to apologize for what I said yesterday. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Naira finally turned to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was a softness in her eyes that made Alex feel as though he had just uncovered something he wasn't meant to see. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "There's no need for an apology," she said, her voice warm but still carrying an air of authority. "You did not cause any harm." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. At least he wasn't completely out of line, but there was still something he couldn't quite figure out. He had seen how her cheeks had flushed when he spoke, and it made him wonder what had made her react that way. Was it the words he had chosen, or was it something else entirely? "I didn't mean to make you feel strange," Alex continued, his tone more earnest now. "It was just a slip of the tongue. I'm not used to, well, this." Naira's gaze softened, and for a brief moment Alex saw something in her eyes that he couldn't place. It was fleeting, like a crack in the surface of a calm lake, but it was there. She took a step closer to him, her presence suddenly more intense than before. "You are human," she said. "You are new to this, I understand." "But that doesn't make it right," Alex replied, his words coming faster now. "I don't want to be disrespectful." Naira's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "I do not take offense easily, Alex. You should not worry so much." For a brief moment, the two of them stood in silence, the noise of the conference around them seeming to fade away. It was just the two of them now, standing on the edge of something unknown, something neither of them fully understood. "I didn't expect this," Alex said, almost to himself. "This whole experience, I thought I was here to talk about trade, about policies, about the future of humanity. But now, it feels like something else is happening, something bigger." Naira's expression grew more thoughtful as she regarded him. "Perhaps it is not so unexpected. You humans have a way of surprising us." Alex chuckled softly. "I guess that's one way to put it." They both fell silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Alex couldn't help but notice how much easier it was to talk to Naira now. The tension between them had faded, and there was an unspoken understanding that lingered in the air. Finally, Naira spoke again, her voice low and steady. "Alex, I must tell you something. Something that you may not fully understand, but I will try." Alex turned to her, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" She hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face, as though she were weighing her next words carefully. "You are not the first human to come to this summit, but you are the first one to leave an impression. Most of your people come and go, hoping to make a deal to prove their worth. But you, Alex, you did not come here for that. You came because you wanted to learn. You wanted to understand. That is something rare in the galaxy." Alex blinked in surprise, unsure how to respond. "I'm just doing my job," he said, "but I do want to understand. I want to be a part of this galaxy, not just as a human but as someone who can contribute something meaningful." Naira's smile returned, this time more genuine. "That is why I am speaking to you now. You may not realize it, but your presence here is already changing things. There are many who see you as a threat, as an obstacle to their power. But there are others like me, who see your potential. You may be the key to a new path." Alex felt a chill run down his spine at her words. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? Was he really that important in the grand scheme of things? Or was this just part of her diplomatic strategy? "Are you saying I can make a difference?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Naira met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "You already have, Alex, in ways you may not even know." The weight of her words settled over him, and for the first time since arriving at the summit, Alex felt a sense of purpose. He had always believed that diplomacy was about making deals and compromises. But now, standing here with Naira, he realized that there was something more at play, something much deeper than politics or trade. Alex didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. His journey had only just begun. The days that followed felt like a blur for Alex. The summit had turned into something far more complicated than he had ever expected. What was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission had quickly transformed into something more personal, something deeper than he had ever anticipated. It was as if every moment he spent with Naira led to another question, another layer of the galaxy's mysteries unraveling before him. Despite the whirlwind of talks, the endless meetings, and the constant stream of negotiations, Alex found himself returning to the same thought: Naira. He had tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but there was something about their conversations that lingered in his mind. Each time they spoke, it felt like he was discovering something new, not just about the galaxy, but about himself. And it wasn't just Naira's presence that stirred something inside him. It was the way she spoke, the way she seemed to understand things that no one else did. Her words, her observations about humanity, had shaken him in ways he couldn't explain. She had told him that his presence was already making a difference. But how could that be? He was just one person, one human among many, with no special powers or abilities. He had no idea what he was really doing, but somehow, he felt like he was part of something far greater than himself. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily on him. He was the representative of humanity, after all. His actions here would define how the galaxy viewed his people for years to come. And yet, every time he thought about the future, he couldn't help but wonder, was it all just a game? Or was there something deeper, something more meaningful that he had yet to uncover? Alex found himself seeking out Naira more and more. He would catch glimpses of her across the hall, her tall figure surrounded by other delegates. She always seemed so poised, so in control of everything around her. But Alex could see the subtle shifts in her expression when their eyes met. There was something there, something unspoken, something that pulled him toward her despite the enormous gulf between their worlds. It wasn't long before the summit reached its final days. The talks were nearing a critical point, and it was clear that the decisions made here would shape the future of the galaxy. As much as Alex had tried to focus on his role as a diplomat, it became harder and harder to separate his personal feelings from the larger political landscape. And in that moment, he realized something he hadn't fully understood before. He didn't just want to impress the galaxy. He wanted to leave a mark on it, to make a difference, not just as a representative of humanity, but as a person who truly believed in the possibility of change. One evening, after a particularly long and tiring day of discussions, Alex found himself walking through the quiet corridors of the summit's headquarters. He had no particular destination in mind, just a need to clear his head. The building was almost empty, with most of the delegates having retired for the night. As he rounded a corner, he saw Naira standing at the far end of the hallway, her back to him. She was looking out of one of the large windows, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. For a moment, Alex stood there watching her. There was something about the way she carried herself, something graceful yet undeniably strong, that fascinated him. He had never met anyone like her, so poised, so confident. And yet there were moments, brief moments, when he saw the vulnerability behind her eyes, moments that she quickly hid away behind her composed demeanor. He walked toward her slowly, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Naira didn't seem to notice him at first. She was lost in the stars, lost in thought, her face softened by the distant light of the galaxy beyond. It was only when he was a few feet away that she turned, sensing his presence. "Alex," she said, her voice carrying the same calm tone it always did. "You should be resting." Alex smiled, though there was a trace of weariness in his eyes. "I couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind, I guess." Naira's gaze softened. She stepped aside, allowing him to stand beside her at the window. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked out at the vast expanse of stars, the distant lights flickering like tiny embers in the dark. "I never expected this," Alex finally said, breaking the silence. "I thought I was coming here to negotiate treaties, to secure alliances, to represent humanity. But now it feels like something bigger is happening." Naira turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. "Sometimes the greatest changes come from the most unexpected places." Alex glanced at her, surprised by the depth of her words. "What do you mean?" Naira paused for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "You don't realize it, but your presence here has already changed the way many of us see humanity. It's not just your words or your actions, it's who you are. You've shown us that humanity has the potential to be more than just a part of the galaxy. You've shown us that you can be a force for something greater." Alex felt a surge of emotion rise in his chest. "But how? I'm just one person, one diplomat. How can I change anything?" Naira's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to him. "Sometimes, the smallest actions have the largest impact. It's not about grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It's about understanding, about connecting with others, about seeing beyond what is and imagining what could be." Alex stared at her, his mind racing. He had come to this summit believing that he was just a representative of humanity, a small piece in a much larger puzzle. But Naira's words had changed something inside him. She was right. It wasn't just about the treaties or the agreements. It was about the connections they were making, about the understanding that was beginning to blossom between them. "You've changed too," Alex said softly. "Since we first met, I can see it. You're not just the representative of an ancient civilization. You're someone who sees the possibility for something better." Naira didn't answer immediately. She simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, finally, she spoke. "Perhaps we are both discovering something new," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex felt a strange pull in his chest. It was as if something had shifted between them. They had come to this summit as representatives of different worlds, but in this moment they were no longer just diplomats. They were two individuals, standing side by side, looking out at the stars and wondering what the future held. As the days passed and the summit came to a close, Alex and Naira continued to work together, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. The galaxy had watched their interactions, and while some had viewed it as a simple diplomatic partnership, others had seen it as something much more profound, a symbol of the potential for unity between species that had long been divided by history, fear, and distrust. When the final vote was cast, the summit ended with the signing of a historic agreement that would change the course of the galaxy's future. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through military might or political maneuvering, but through the willingness to connect, to understand, and to believe in something greater than themselves. As the delegates filed out of the conference hall, Alex and Naira shared a quiet moment. There were no grand speeches or promises of what was to come. There was only the quiet understanding between them, the knowledge that they had both played a part in something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. "I don't know what the future holds," Alex said, his voice quiet. "But I do know one thing: we're on the right path." Naira nodded, a small, genuine smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Yes, Alex, we are." And with that, they walked side by side into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities the future would bring.